Hello all. I'm emailing the link to this video to you directly. It's not a snapshot. I'm not reading from a teleprompter. In fact, I'm going to refer quite a bit to some notes, and I hope you don't take that wrong. This is something that comes from the heart for me today, and I've put these notes down because it's important to me that I not miss out on anything that I'd like to say to you today. I hope you'll give me a few minutes. This is longer than some of the typical snapshots. I hope you'll give me some time and watch this all the way through. You know, I was at a meeting recently, and I heard Mark Bouchard, who's a prominent leader in the Prosperity 2020 group, tell a story that he had shared with Utah business leaders. He asked them the following. He said to these business leaders, "You've just been named as a CEO of a new company. You're allowed to only hire college graduates, and those college graduates need to have specific degrees. You can only pay them $27,000 a year to start. You invest next to nothing in their professional development throughout their entire careers. You ask them, in effect, to each write a $700 check to the company to pay for their own supplies. And all of this occurs in an environment where the landscape and the expectations are changing at virtually the speed of light." So Mr. Bouchard then asked the business leaders, with these conditions as I proposed them, would you be able to run a successful company? And what he shared with us in the meeting is that folks' jaws dropped and they shook their heads and they realized what a difficult situation has been constructed. Because you see, folks, we are that very company. And I want you to know, I firmly believe that we are in the most fundamental and in the most honored of all professions. I believe that. There is no greater profession than ours. Now, having said that, I know that we've given you lots to do this year. I've had some creative recommendations regarding the marshmallows that we saw in an earlier video, and not to mention recommendations about ping pong balls, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'd like to share a letter, not a typical letter, frankly, but one that comes from a teacher that everyone who knows this person recognizes as truly a good teacher, a great teacher. But I think this letter embodies some feelings that some of you may share. Here it begins. "I want you to know that I'm sitting in my classroom with a couple of colleagues at 7:45 on a Friday night trying to get things ready for teaching next week. SEP conferences and sub-plans for Tuesday site teacher training, and nothing in the, expletive deleted, school is working. The network has crashed how many times now? We have no printers that work in this building. How are we supposed to be successful teachers? What kind of profession expects their employees to work in these conditions? This is ridiculous. And people wonder why I am overweight and single. We're planning to post a note on our doors Tuesday at 4:05 that reads, 'Sorry, network crash. Granite is an epic fail. We have no materials to present you with for SEP conferences. Therefore, they are canceled. Please contact Martin Bates with any concerns you might have. He is happy and willing to help. Sincerely, the overworked and underpaid teachers at the school. P.S. We've already worked 100 hours over what's necessary to earn our comp day.'" Letter goes on. I'm not sure the teacher morale in our district could be any worse. Maybe a little more attention should be focused on building teacher morale and a little less attention to the 40,000 assessments and data collections I've given to my students in the past 3 weeks. Do I really need 20 different assessments to tell me what level my kids are at? I'm pretty sure I can tell from one conversation with them. What in the world would I do without the 20 acuity screeners my students took this month? Maybe at your next meeting with Martin you can tell him the ping pong balls have all dropped and are rolling down the hall. The teachers at our school must not be good at juggling. We can't continue working in a profession like this. For the past 8 years I've convinced myself things can't get worse, and yet somehow they always do. We are now in a free fall off the edge of a cliff. Grr, I hate my life right now. I need to marry a rich man so I can get out of this life-sucking profession. Maybe when all the good teachers have left, they will realize what they have done to the education system. I can't be the only one feeling this way, right? Unfortunately, probably not. For the next couple of minutes, I do want to talk with you about the things that have been piled on this year. The instructional framework, Gradebook, the acuity and benchmarks. Now I know we could talk about Canvas and Go Math and Digits and websites and M-Drive and a lot of other things, but you know what, those, we'll get to those, but let me talk about these three first. First, to instructional framework. Please recall from the Marshmallow student clip that we did that I said we don't expect teachers to put all of their lessons and their lesson plans onto this design template. I've got some artifacts here. I use that word advisedly. We don't expect you to put all of your lesson plans onto these templates. However, when your principal or the assistant principal comes to observe what's going on in your classroom, to watch you teach, they will be looking for evidence of the use of the paradigm, of those elements. And why? Because we all know, you know, we all know, that those elements, when they're all in place, when they're all together, that they maximize learning. They truly do. Now to Gradebook. A few years ago, the state, given that there are 41 school districts, all of whom use their own student system, they put out the mandate that for the school year, beginning the school year 2013, that's this one, student data would need to be submitted in a SIF-compliant format. So we, along with most every other district in the state, had to adopt a new student data system. In our case, many are familiar with Discovery 2.0, if you will. Now, knowing that this was happening, and to keep you from needing to enter everything twice, because the Gradebook that we had did not speak with this SIF-compliant Discovery 2.0. So we piloted Gradebook 2.0 in an elementary school, a junior high, and a high school for all of last school year. And then we implemented both Discovery and Gradebook 2.0s at the beginning of this school year, as we needed to, at least with Discovery. There is no question, folks, there is no question that the training we gave 4,000 learners on the one day of professional development that we were able to restore to your contracts this year, that training was less than optimal. Please don't feel like the Lone Ranger out there when a lesson doesn't go as planned because of technology. That happens to me as well. However, I think most of us do remember the old blue attendance roll books. Remember these? We had to hand these in, filled out, in ink. Remember, they checked that off that it was in ink, to the office, and the office then moved every grade over to the CUME folder. Now, when we went from these attendance registers, when we went from those to bubble sheets. Now, this is a bubble sheet, but it's not actually a grading bubble sheet because we haven't been able to track any of those down. But when we went from the blue book to the bubble sheet, we all thought the world was going to end. Remember, we had to transcribe everything, move everything over ourselves. Do you remember that? And then sometimes the Scantrons, there were different size Scantrons. Oh my goodness. We've come a long way from there, but that was a real bumpy time. Now, I know there have been bumps, sometimes significant and big bumps, with Gradebook 2.0. I also know, as do you, that suggestions have been implemented as quickly as possible. We all wish that the pilot had identified more of the problems, but here we are. Pronouncements from some corners that, granted, is an epic fail notwithstanding, we will get through this. I know we can do it. Okay, now to benchmarks and acuity. I want to share with you the only communication my parents received from the school my kindergarten year, at the end of my kindergarten year. That's it. It says Martin Bates attended kindergarten in the 72-73 school year. That dates me. And is recommended for placement next September in first grade. Days present, days absent, times tardy. and written in and read in the bottom, assignment 7374, room 11, Mednick. Now, this did not tell me or my parents very much about my achievement, nor frankly did it tell Mrs. Mednick much about what was coming to her classroom either. Now bear with me for just a minute. I went to the doctor earlier this week. I had some concerns. Now he could have looked at me and declared me sick and given me an antibiotic. Instead, he conducted an assessment, not a test to see if I was healthy or sick, but a diagnostic exercise, an interview, and some procedures. Ultimately, he gave me a prescription, not an antibiotic, and some recommendations. Now, just so that none of you worry, there's nothing wrong with me that an increase of fiber in my diet isn't going to be able to take care of. But if the point of that example wasn't clear, let me now use an educational example. When I taught math at the Alternative High School in Provo, at the first of every quarter, and any time I got a new student, I'd give them an assessment. Now, having come from teaching special education, I had photocopied the math section of the KTEA. Now, I don't remember what the K stands for, but it was some kind of test of educational attainment. And I would give that math section to them to identify holes in their learning. Now, it got so I could just about tell what grade it had been in elementary school when they'd had a traumatic event in their life, based on where the specific hole was in that education. And those holes then compounded their way forward. But when I'd identified where those deficits were in their learning and in their education and plugged those very deliberately, we often saw huge jumps forward in the achievement, in that particular student's achievement. I maintain that assessment time, the time I spend in those assessments, that was time well spent, if admittedly a copyright violation. Now, in this context, it strikes me strange when I hear people say they know within 5 minutes if a student is on grade level in reading or math or not. Sure, okay, so they're not on grade level. Do you start with letter sounds or with addition? That's a waste of time. If what they don't understand is common denominators, wouldn't that be good to know? Now, please don't think of these assessments as things to check off as complete so you can get back to your schedule. They're tools to help you diagnose your students accurately and regularly while they're still your students, and you can still do something about it. Now, having said this, it is not completely clear to me, it's not clear to me with acuity and the benchmarks that we are asking all of the right questions. Whether we need to ask as many questions as we do, and whether, for example, the selected readings, if those really get to the objectives, or if they are themselves too difficult for the students to read. Every comment we've received, even those buried in angry rhetoric, is being reviewed, and some changes have already been made. Use these assessments, and then please give us constructive feedback. So, in sum, there is no question that these tools are new. I've heard reports that people are being threatened or told it's time for them to move on. I take great exception to that and would like to hear the specifics if that's been your personal experience. I don't, however, expect everyone to have mastered these tools. Certainly not yesterday or even by next week. I do know you can do this. I do know we can do this. We can't go backwards. We've got to move forwards, and I have full confidence in you. Again, I know you can do this. Now, to wrap up, I want to go back to Canvas, websites, learning and content management system, digital text, Go Math, things like that. There is something terribly unfair going on that I'm keenly aware of. Parents who were born after 1960 have a different expectation of teachers than did my parents and other parents born 20 or so years before 1960. These parents, frankly the parents of the students you have right now, expect and demand a level of accountability and communication formerly unprecedented. Now, a downside of making myself accessible is that people access me. I don't just get emails from teachers. I hear from parents, many parents as well. Increasingly, I hear parents suggest that teachers we all recognize as great teachers are in fact poor teachers in their eyes because they don't use technological resources for instruction or communication. They don't respond to emails and so on. Now, AP pass rate, CRT scores, these are interesting to them, but secondary to their perception of the teacher's accessibility, connectivity, and perhaps most importantly, the teacher's inability to articulate or address the specific needs or strengths of their child. Again, this may not be fair, but it's real. So in this context, folks, I will not allow us to go the way of RCA or Zenith or any of a dozen other formerly great organizations that have dried up and blown away because their undisputed quality notwithstanding, they weren't providing what the consumer wanted. Note, there's no bad guy in this equation. The organization's not a bad guy, but neither is the consumer. Now these tools, these expectations that I've discussed with you today, they're not gimmicks, and while they can be amended and adjusted, they are not going away. This is about, and I hope to not be overly dramatic here, but I believe this. This is about the survival of public education in general, and about our schools here in Granite specifically. It's bumpy, it's hard, but I know we can do this. There has never been a more crucial time or a more exciting time to be in our profession. The future is bright, but it doesn't look like the past. I thank you for your commitment to kids, and I thank you for being with me during this truly transformational time. Thank you.